Hope you're having a good time. We're going to have an amazing lunch and learn today with some wonderful people who came from far away to share their wisdom with us. And I hope to see this room filled like this. I love it. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi everybody, sorry for a couple of little things in the beginning, but my name is Homa. I'm one of the organizers for the Lunch and Learn. Again, love seeing this whole room. We get this every week. It is my pleasure to introduce one of our own, Dr. Mary Curran. Dr. Curran oversees and leads the Rutgers GSE's efforts to leverage the strengths and diversity of local New Jersey communities in forging relations with international communities in global leadership, education, programs, and relations. Today, her and her team will present a workshop on the community engaged study abroad programs. So without further ado, Dr. Curran.
Thank you very much. We are so excited to be here today with this whole I'm Mary Curran. I am a faculty member in language education, and for many, many years, probably 30 years, I've had the fortune to spend the time in Mexico and collaborate with colleagues in Mexico. And today I'm here with 8 of my colleagues to present to you about community engaged programming that we do here in New Jersey and in Yucatan, but the focus is going to be on Yucatan today. So I think we can go ahead. I'll start introducing the team. Well, I'll introduce Sam. Sam Critchley is the coordinator of the English programs at La Universidad Autónoma de Yucatán, which we and they call WADI. So you'll probably hear WADI today. So he is from the WADI. Tisimino. He's at the Tisimino campus. And then Raul Manzanilla is an anthropologist who works at what they call PC, which is for immersion cultural programming in Mérida, and he's given us lots of support and consultation on our program cultural events. So the team, the 3 of us are here with a group of 6 students who are immersed among you. So pueden levantar la mano si son de la WADI. So these are 6 students from WADI. 3 of them are from Tizimin. 3 of them are from Mérida. And one of our principles, today we're going to be focusing on program principles, has to do with communication, and that has to do with multilingualism and using all the languages on our team. And so we're going to be switching from English to Espanol today, hopefully making sure that everybody captures what we're saying as well. So thank you very much for coming. So here's our plan for the day.
Oh, this is this one on the left.
Yes, this is who we are. So you can go to the next slide.
Yeah.
Oh, this is one of the.
Of the 2 screens, the one on the left is the one that isn't obscured by the things on the.
Right, but can we move to the next screen?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, so this is our plan. We're going to give you, we already introduced, we're going to give you a little bit of background. We are going to tell you about our program so that you have a context for the main focus of our talk, which is really the guiding principles. We've been working on articulating what kind of principles should be guiding us as we engage in this kind of work. And we've been drawing on a lot of literature for that, and one of the main points or places is even our own literature that we've generated here at the GSE on community engaged anti-racist education. And I know at some point we'll be putting a link into the Zoom chat for that because we've done a lot of work on this. And then hopefully time for discussion. We have so much to say, so let's see. We'll go on to the next slide here too. So I already introduced the 3 of us to you. You can go to the next slide. And here is the group in Ekbalam, which is a small comunidad, pueblo, in Mexico, where the group in Mexico is putting in community engaged work into practice. Okay? So, next slide, please. The background to the program, between the GSE and WADI, we've been collaborating for a little more than 10 years. And we've done so many different things. things. I've tried to be very creative with how we have been able to collaborate, beginning with offering one of our required classes, classroom organization, in Mexico. That was a way to make it work. We've given storytelling workshops here and there. We have had teacher exchanges. We've had English teachers come. We've had Mandarin teachers come. We have given Conversation Cafe workshops, a community engaged program we do here. We do that in Mexico. They started it there called Conversation Hour. And Sam's going to talk about it a little bit more, but we had a project called De la Milpa a la Tortilla, which is from the field to the tortilla, all about planting corn and ending up with this beautiful tortilla. So that was our last year's focus, and this year's focus with our work is really the linguistic landscape and community engagement. So this is like the breadth and the development of our programming. So Sam, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Sure, yeah. So Mary and I met during the pandemic, or just before the pandemic, right at the very beginning of the pandemic. And we were introduced by a colleague of mine at my university who works in exchange program. And we started talking about our ideas, and we realized that we could probably put together a proposal and try and get funding for some of our ideas. And well, on the second attempt, we did win this 100,000 Strong in the Americas grant to do an exchange program, which was obviously affected by COVID restrictions. And on the first version of this program, we only managed to do the trip from Mexico here. So this is the second time I've brought students, the second generation of students. But luckily on this second version, we were able to do both trips. So Mary was able to bring her students to Mexico, and as these activities have happened, lots of nice final products have come out of the work, like this book, which is a multilingual anthology of stories in Mayan, Spanish, and English. And this then became a play which we performed at the International Book Fair in Yucatan. So it's kind of been a domino effect of rewarding activities, really, ever since I met Mary. So.
I'm just going to pass the book around in Mayan, Spanish, and English. The stories were written by our students and illustrated by them, too.
Okay, so just in terms of the timeline, as I said, spring 2022, this is the second version of the exchange. Mary brought students, the Wadi students visited in New Jersey in spring 2022, and then spring 2023, this year, Rutgers students visited Yucatan, and that's when we started this community engaged project in Ekbalam, which we'll be explaining a little later. And obviously we're now in this stage with my Wadi students visiting New Jersey, and then we plan every spring to have Mary bring the Rutgers students in the spring, just before the spring vacation.
One of the principles that you'll hear about in a little bit is, equity. And to us, this slide might just look like a timeline, but it's a huge achievement because Rutgers University students were able to have the opportunity to go to Mexico, but the Mexican students weren't able to come here. So getting the funding and then getting the university to commit has been a huge factor in that.
I'll talk about that a little later as well.
So what is community engaged education? The simple version is really putting community knowledge at the core, approaching our work from an asset-based, strength-based perspective, where we're learning from the community and with each other. So instead of having a sage on the stage or having a traditional classroom approach, or even like a tourism approach, we're really changing what we're doing to be engaging with community and learning from community members. And when you hear our guiding principles, maybe you'll have a little better sense of what we mean by this. We've discovered that even community engaged education has some different meanings for us. on our team, which took a while to figure out. I was operating with the perspective I always had here in the US, which means working with community-based organizations. And so here at the GSE, we have exchanges and programming with New Labor, with the New Brunswick Free Public Library, or other organizations, and we're connecting with community, so outside of formal classroom settings. However, it took us a while, and we were talking at cross purposes, which I think is illustrative of what we're going to talk about. Raul will talk about interculturalidad, because in Mexico, having community engaged education really meant being en comunidad, going into a community, into a pueblo, someplace out of an urban setting, and having exchanges too. So it's really fascinating itself as we blended our concept of it and the Mexican concept. So this is just a touch on this subject.
Okay, so the first video.
Oh, right.
Just a very brief kind of visual representation of the traveling, the movements that we've been making. So this is the Yucatan Peninsula. You can see two pins in the map. This one is the big city, over 1 million inhabitants. This is the small town of Tizimin, where 3 of my students are from. And in the north of Tizimin has about 50,000 or 60,000 inhabitants. 2 hours west of Tizimin is the state capital of Merida. Huge concrete. There's no hills or rivers or anything. And this is the historic central building. So that's the Yucatan Peninsula, right in the southeast of Mexico, just above Central America. So yeah, obviously, we've come all the way up here to Rutgers. And it's first time on a plane for some of my students, first time abroad for, I think, all of my students.
First time experiencing cold. No sé por qué, para nosotros no está tan frío. It's not really cold, right? Share what you said too when they walked out into the cold, and he said, it's like Costco. Do you know why?
Freezer at Costco?
The freezer section in Costco, right? Yeah, it is, right? That kind of cold. So we're going to begin talking about the principles.
Pues acá tenemos 5 principios que son fundamentales para este proyecto. Eso no quiere decir que a lo largo del proyecto puedan surgir nuevos principios.
Okay, so 5 guiding principles which we have established up to this point. It doesn't mean that there may not be more that we add or change later.
Pero para nosotros fue fundamental considerar, por ejemplo, comunicación y respeto. Esa comunicación y respeto que debe haber entre, pues, en este caso, los grupos, las universidades, con las comunidades, la interculturalidad. Muchas veces somos sociedades multiculturales, pero eso muchas veces no quiere decir que somos interculturales, ¿no? Entonces, es importante también esta parte.
So communication and respect, well, that's obviously number 1 for us. But also interculturality is not the same as multiculturality. So yeah, we're exploring like the interplay between the different cultures who do inhabit the same spaces.
Conciencia y cuestionamiento de cómo nosotros como profesores, como estudiantes, representando alguna institución, qué tanto afectamos en esas comunidades. Equidad y empoderamiento. Los grupos con los que estamos trabajando se eligieron precisamente porque tienen un empoderamiento, ahorita vamos a hablar un poquito más de eso, y seguimiento y fortalecimiento pensando en que siga habiendo una relación más orgánica con estas sociedades, con estos grupos, con estas comunidades.
So awareness and questioning, equity and empowerment, following up and strengthening, these are things that we will expand on further forward in the presentation.
This is the initial video?
Yeah.
Okay, so before we hit play, what we have done is created a video to talk through the guiding principles. So the first, and we're going to do it in sections. So the first video gives you kind of an overview of our project. Raul is speaking in Spanish, and we have English subtitles, so you can follow along. And then after that, we're going to introduce each principle, show a little video about it, and then talk it through with you, too. All right, and we're fingers crossed that it all works the way it's supposed to.
El proyecto de educación con perspectiva comunitaria es un esfuerzo colaborativo entre la Escuela de Posgrado en Educación de la Universidad Rutgers de Nueva Jersey, las licenciaturas en Educación y Enseñanza del Idioma Inglés de la Facultad de Educación y la Unidad Multidisciplinaria de Tizimín, el Centro Institucional de Lenguas y la Dirección General de Desarrollo Académico de la Universidad Autónoma de Yucatán. Para este proyecto se realizaron diversas actividades en diferentes contextos comunitarios, como círculos de lectura y conversación, además de actividades interculturales con estudiantes de la Unidad Académica Bachillerato con Interacción Comunitaria, UABIC, de la UADI en la ciudad de Mérida. Un taller de aprendizaje de lengua maya con el grupo Tumben Sácil, compuesto de niñas, jóvenes y mujeres del pueblo de Cisbichén, así como de talleres participativos a cargo de mujeres y jóvenes integrantes de la cooperativa Unágil Ekbalán del pueblo de Ekbalán, Yucatán. La idea de estas interacciones comunitarias es compartir, comprender, comparar formas de aprendizaje y conocimiento. En este viaje en particular, vimos cómo diversos grupos de personas se empoderan y apropian de su cultura, lengua, su entorno natural y todos aquellos conocimientos que pueden generar comunidades más autosuficientes y autogestivas. En este sentido, aprendemos de la comunidad en comunidad.
And I'm realizing it's probably difficult because you're reading and trying to see the pictures at the same time, right? But there are plenty more visual images to follow. But that's a good reflection on our part to think about how to do it in a way you can do both. I noticed images earlier after the first slide shows up. So this gives you an overview just from what we did when we were there earlier this year, working in community with several opportunities for exchanges among university students, high school students with us, and young people you saw were conversation cafes we did in Mayan language, and the young children were engaging us in Mayan, teaching us about Mayan. Is it Tubin Sasson? The Mayan group is called A New Light, and one of the teachers in a elementary school has an after-school program in Mayan, so we were able to participate in that and see how they're preserving language in their community. So we'll start with communication and respect, and we've got a little video to show about this, and then we'll talk it through with you a little bit.
Comunicación y respeto. Poder comunicarse entre dos personas o grupos diferentes de personas puede ser más complejo de lo pensado.
Pues tenemos un beita que vinto calo que caótico es más pues que más que un otro me le pech que más que yo lo que anda con tomando hilo be tushki me ya bashki me ya tek bishi me ya tek tung katiko yo de upe tu upe experiencia
ya que no se trata del simple hecho de expresar palabras, sino de transmitir ideas y conceptos que ayudan a entender diferentes puntos de vista.
Nuestro grupo es una oportunidad de conocer el rico acervo cultural o todo lo que tiene nuestra cultura.
Diferentes culturas.
¿Qué es?
Es una frutita que se arranca de un arbolito que tiene muchas espinas.
Okay.
Entonces la sacamos y la cocemos.
Diferentes formas de vida.
¿Español o maya en la casa?
Maya. Maya.
¿Solamente maya?
Lo que pasa que con mis papás, sí,
como les había comentado desde el principio, lo que ha pasado es que en las nuevas generaciones, en este caso mis sobrinos y otros, entienden la maya, pero no lo hablan.
Y diferentes formas de ver el mundo. Algo que no se puede lograr si no hay un respeto de uno hacia el otro.
Pero
We'll talk about this.
Okay, so obviously for a project like this, a great deal of communication takes place between faculty, for example, myself and Mary and Raul, also between ourselves, the faculty, and the authorities of our universities, between ourselves and our students, between the students, the groups of like Rutgers students and Wadi students, but also within each group of students. Communication and respect is key. And when we go and collaborate with our friends in the small town of Espalam, the communication between the people who live there and us as visitors from the local area, and also groups of visitors from other countries. So it's a very complex interplay, and the dynamics that emerge during those interactions reveal obviously power structures and conventions. For example, there can be subconscious assumptions about who may know more or less, who may have more money or less money, or authority in a given situation. So the ability to obviously speak effectively, but more than that, to listen actively is really important, and also to be able to adapt your communication to different contexts. For example, the pace of decision making and the pace of communication, because not everyone lives in such a fast-paced environment. So
We're finding that out during this trip.
what can be assertiveness and efficacy in one place can be pushiness in another place, or like imposition of your ideas. So we did attempt at the end of this day, we had a long day and we wanted to like achieve so much, so we added a 1 hour learning activity at the end, and from our point of view it had been slightly hurried, a little chaotic, and we felt that we were doing all the talking, so we had tried to do too much too soon on that occasion, and we talked about that. But then after several follow-up visits, with the help of one of my Mayan speaking students, we had hours of conversation, and we realized that they really were into the idea of having a language program or some kind of collaboration where English could be learnt, but also maybe they could teach some Mayan to us, but they just felt it was way too short. Like that 1 hour thing was not feasible. So more workshops were requested, and the idea of this two-way exchange emerged, where we would do the learning or basically participate in an exchange on site in the town itself. And the linguistic resources that all the collaborators have means that through translanguaging, we're able to like welcome and facilitate the use of whatever language people feel comfortable using. And we're trying to do that during this presentation, but obviously it comes with its own challenges. But it's the way we would like to do things, and we hope to be getting better at it with more practice. Even with our written communications, you've probably seen the book being passed around. So the placing of the languages in that book was a big decision as well. And obviously the placing of one language relative to another language can reinforce or disrupt the status quo in terms of power dynamics. And well, the unifying theme of those stories is the milpa. The milpa is the ancestral Mesoamerican agricultural system. So we were lucky enough to have students who have a milpa on their family land and speak Mayan. So it made perfect sense to have Mayan as the first language of the three in the translations. despite the fact that maybe the readership would be unfamiliar with that language, but the stories being told and the culture they came from, Mayan was the right language to appear first, as you can see here. So it wasn't a question of thinking about what people would necessarily be able to understand most easily, but centering the language of the culture that was being represented, basically. So jump on to the next slide.
Yeah, so the next slide is interculturalidad. So Raul is going to talk in the video and we'll follow up with a little bit of it.
Interculturalidad. Pensando en respeto, un concepto importante para nuestro proyecto es la interculturalidad, donde se busca un reconocimiento del otro y de uno mismo. A través de las interacciones lingüísticas y el conocimiento de otras formas culturales diferentes a las nuestras. Donde ambas partes aprenden y se nutren de conocimientos y experiencias nuevas.
Gracias.
Bien, pues como podemos ver en el video, se busca que los estudiantes que nos visitan a Yucatán puedan tener escenarios en los cuales ellos puedan interactuar con esa parte de la cultura en Yucatán que a veces se está perdiendo un poco. Por eso habla.
So the hope is that the students from the US can come and experience a side of Yucatan culture that maybe is not so visible or maybe being lost.
Por eso hablaba en un principio de que a veces somos sociedades multiculturales, pero eso no quiere decir que seamos interculturales. A veces hay culturas más fuertes que van absorbiendo, ¿sí? En este caso, nuestra cultura maya. Una cultura que está muy fuerte todavía. Hay muchos maya hablantes, hay muchas comunidades que están haciendo esfuerzos para, como vamos a hablar más adelante, empoderarse y utilizar sus recursos, utilizar su cultura y mostrar el conocimiento que ellos tienen. ¿Sí?
So multiculturality, as we said before, is not the same as interculturality. And Mayan culture is in danger of being kind of dominated by or subsumed by the Spanish language, and Mayan language is kind of at risk of not being carried over into the younger generation. So that's part of Raul's work.
Por lo tanto, hay que hacer como ofrecer a los estudiantes escenarios para buscar estrategias y ellos puedan como crear un puente, ¿sí? Conocer otra parte de nuestra cultura, ¿sí? No es lo mismo ir como un turista, por ejemplo, a Yucatán, que ir para conocer un poquito más de esta cultura que a veces la vemos muy superficial.
So it's not the same being a tourist and just seeing the superficial side. We're trying to build bridges between the cultures so they can get to know it on a deeper level.
Y algo que caracteriza a nuestra cultura en general en México, que somos muy curiosos. Cuando vemos a alguien que llega de otro lado, siempre es como preguntar de dónde vienen, siempre ofrecer. Hace rato en la clase anterior hablábamos de lo cálido que puede ser la cultura mexicana en general. Y precisamente crear esos espacios, por ejemplo, como en el caso de la UABIC, donde estudiantes de Estados Unidos van a estos grupos o estos círculos de conversación y puede haber un intercambio de conocimiento, de saber de dónde vienen, qué lenguas hablan y conocerse un poco más de una forma más orgánica y natural.
So curiosity and warmth are big parts of Mexican personalities. So we've been able to, like, in the work that's been taking place in the high school called the Wabik, with the conversation cafes and things like that, it's been an excellent opportunity for the students to get to know each other and really open up to each other.
Y en ese sentido también conocer un poco qué pasa fuera de la ciudad, con otras comunidades, con otros grupos sociales, que igual están trabajando para fortalecer su cultura, para dar a conocer su cultura, sus conocimientos, ¿sí? Y también en nuestro caso reflexionar sobre eso.
So also to get out of the city to the smaller villages where we've been able to see communities that are trying to keep their culture alive and share their culture with visitors.
En ese sentido, por ejemplo, los estudiantes de la UADY están haciendo o llevando un pequeño diario, una bitácora, en la cual ellos van registrando sus observaciones, no solamente dentro de las comunidades en Yucatán, sino ahora en este viaje, por ejemplo, como las diferencias. Saber reconocer lo diferentes que somos, lo variado que somos, lo diverso que somos, nos ayuda también a crear un respeto, una, ¿cómo decir? Buena palabra. Sí, es como crear ese respeto hacia el otro, ¿sí? Todos somos diferentes. A veces podemos pertenecer a una misma familia y todos vamos a ser diferentes. Entonces, imagínense en una sociedad multicultural. Entonces, aprender a reconocer esas diferencias nos hace rico, nos hace reflexionar acerca de eso y respetarse uno al otro. No buscamos, o a veces uno desea lo que tiene esa cultura, me gustaría tenerlo, ¿no? O simplemente como negar también a veces uno su propia cultura, ¿sí? Entonces, ¿por qué hacer eso? Ninguna cultura, ninguna sociedad va a ser mejor que otra. Simplemente somos iguales y hay que reconocerlo y respetarlo, ¿no?
So the students have been doing so they've been keeping a diary, and both in the work in the villages and also on this trip, the students have been keeping a diary. And we're hoping to be able to keep a record of the moments, like the culture shock moments, or the difficult moments, or just those moments where you realize you're in a completely different culture, and you notice similarities but also differences, and you learn to understand and value and also respect these other cultures, and maybe also look at your own culture in a different way.
Next one. We've been talking how they're like mini ethnographers while they're here and giving them the lenses and the tools to do that. Equidad y empoderamiento, that's mine, but we're going to watch the video first, right? Another one.
Equidad y empoderamiento. Aprender de los casos en los que las comunidades y los grupos de estudiantes retomen o se apropien de su cultura.
Pues lo este shock na homo, pero le más shock na hondo na pues le más bonito. Después de esto que le pues ya calcula que tu maestro ha se pues ya me chanta, entonces ya na bote ya más que minano todo tiempo. Muy beita le te tag en bet con menos que tu lac le baje lo le te cabe puntito. Ya antitone tag can ya pero pues de que caco hasta le me beita.
People in this community.
Entre estas.
Su historia, su entorno natural, su lengua y de todos aquellos conocimientos que son importantes para entender su contexto sociocultural y que están haciendo a estas comunidades más autosuficientes.
Pues las familias que ofrecen los talleres en la comunidad reciben un ingreso por ese medio. Entonces es el involucramiento de la comunidad también.
Posesión de artesanías, todos los trabajos hechos por los niños. Y pues es la parte también que les gusta mucho, porque dice, y lo que hice se compró, se vendió. Sí, pero están felices de que alguien haya llevado su trabajo.
Okay, so equity and empowerment, empowerment like leadership, there's so much we could say about this too. I already mentioned one thing, which was like having the bi-directional travel so that there was equity in that sense. In the photo, you see Ariel, and Sam mentioned him earlier. He came here. He's Mayan speaking. He has the milpa in his dad, and he had a milpa. And he was able to really take a leadership role and develop through the programming with us. And one of the things we always felt like our students have these transformative leadership role developing opportunities. We're really trying to think so that it happens for students on both sides and it happens for community members. The communities are already doing these workshops that you saw, like hammock making workshops for tourists in the community and making handicraft items. But they, when we spoke with them too, said, oh, we really don't know exactly how to interact with the tourists or the language we should be speaking. They want French too, right? It wasn't only just English and other languages. So we're listening to them. We're thinking about how we can be working together in ways that they wish to be working together with us and putting things into action. We also are, the money got spoken about there, and money comes up all the time. And it comes up in other global interactions like I've been doing with Professor Tanya too, because some of our participants said, like, we can't look at you without seeing dollars. We can't look at you without seeing money. And so we need to think about what that means. And it means lots of different things. One of them is that we've been trying to think about how we budget and finance our programs so that the dollars, which, $10 here might not seem like so much, but could actually maybe make it possible for a student from the Wadi to travel along with us when we're in Mexico and go to the community. So creative things like that have guided us as well. So next is conciencia y cuestionamiento, so like critical thinking and questioning.
Conciencia y cuestionamiento. Cuando uno navega en una cultura diferente a la suya, uno tiene que estar consciente del contexto histórico y de las diferencias culturales que uno puede encontrar.
Que se desarrolla en la comunidad, y gracias a eso nosotros los jóvenes pues hemos tenido oportunidad de trabajo y nos ayuda igual con los estudios, tener un poco de ingreso que nos estudie, y eso nos motiva a seguir estudiando algún idioma para que nosotros podamos ofrecer otros servicios a la gente que llegue a la comunidad.
Entendiendo que somos ajenos al contexto social en el que nos encontramos.
¿Cuántas horas para hacer una hamaca? Una hamaca tarda como 3 semanas. 3 semanas para terminar una hamaca. Sí, porque así como dice él, no lo urdimos así.
y lo estamos percibiendo a través de nuestro particular lente cultural.
And it's like being here, you can imagine like walking through the ruins, because I know they were speaking about how it was all connected before.
Yeah.
It gives you a different perspective on it, rather than just reading it online or someone telling you about it. It's amazing to actually visualize this, because it's not something I would ever think that I would see.
Tratamos de cuidar cada repercusión que nuestra presencia puede causar.
Justamente eso es, porque el concepto de este gran trabajo es generar un poco de trabajo local para la gente, sobre todo también, pero colaborar también para seguir conservando pues la flora y la fauna, la naturaleza también, que es parte de nuestra vida. Y el maíz tradicional, que es la siembra, pues también es parte de de nuestro trabajo principal, porque mucho antes del turismo es la actividad principal.
Cuestionando nuestras propias palabras, acciones y decisiones con el objetivo de evitar un impacto negativo o desequilibrio social, económico o ambiental.
Learning history, learning information, learning things that I wouldn't otherwise know and I can bring back, and that's how you spread that knowledge and you tell people like, no, this is how it really was, like, because the history that we're taught is something that is not really the truth. And so just telling people, showing people like, this is what really happened, this is what I went to go see, I think that's really strong, and I am really excited to go back and show people.
Bien. Esta parte de conciencia y cuestionamiento es muy importante para nosotros, porque tenemos que cuestionarnos y reflexionar acerca de qué tanto influimos en la comunidad. Como profesores o futuros profesores, son referentes para la comunidad.
Awareness and questioning is super important, because we're dealing with working with future teachers who really need to ask those difficult questions before they go out into their profession.
Y como representantes también de instituciones o de organizaciones, pues también vamos a tener una repercusión en esas comunidades. Y en este caso en particular, pues desde hace mucho tiempo la doctora Mari conoce a don Crisanto, que es el grupo de Tumbensácil, donde pues constantemente van estudiantes a aprender un poquito sobre maya, y este año pues se ha estado trabajando con la comunidad de Ekbalan, y ahorita vamos a platicar un poquito más sobre este caso en particular.
Okay, so Mary has been taking students to the town of Sispichen for many years now, and this project in Ekbalam is a relatively new project that we're going to talk about more in future slides.
En estos dos casos, por ejemplo, con Crisanto en Sispichen, con el grupo Tumbensácil, prácticamente no tienen un apoyo del gobierno. Él y su familia constantemente está trabajando para la comunidad. En este caso, con jóvenes, niñas, mujeres, para darle una revalorización a nuestra lengua maya y a nuestra cultura maya.
So, Don Crisanto, bottom left, he's in Sispichen. He doesn't have any support from the government, so he really relies on the people who come to visit to keep his project going. His project is based on teaching Mayan to the local population, and also making handicrafts and teaching all kinds of Mayan culture and understanding of the Mayan glyphs, the writing system. And so a combination of teaching to the local kids and also teaching to the visitors and tourists who come to the town.
Raul also mentioned how important it is for us to think about our impact on those communities and how our presence there can change a balance.
Y en este caso de Balan en particular, es un proyecto que conozco desde hace muchos años, y ellos han tratado de aprovechar su entorno natural, la naturaleza, crear sus propias fuentes de trabajo, ¿sí? Ayudar a los jóvenes que están estudiando, que regresan al pueblo, y ayudar a las familias de la comunidad.
So Don Fede and Don Mario, Don Fede is the man in the center of this image in Ekbalam. Their project is really about sustaining a source of employment for the local youth, because if not, they may go to work in Cancun. And so it's self-sustaining, it's autonomous, and for the benefit of the community. That's the kind of philosophy behind their project.
Estas ideas, como mencionó Sam, pues son precisamente esa idea que traen, porque Don Fede pues trabajó en Cancún, vivió mucho tiempo en Cancún, y viene con esa idea de que, bueno, el turismo puede ser una opción para nuestra comunidad. ¿Qué tanto puede afectar la visita de turistas en la comunidad? O en este caso, ¿qué tanto podemos afectar nosotros al estar en la comunidad? Entonces empezamos a cuestionarnos, a repensar, a reflexionar sobre esa presencia de gente externa en una comunidad, es decir, pequeña, donde la mayoría de la gente habla maya.
Yeah, so maybe something that we haven't made clear is that Ekbalam Pueblo, the town or village of Ekbalam, is right next to Ekbalam ruins, which is probably after Chichen Itza and Uxmal, like maybe the third most famous Mayan archaeological site. So it's not like exactly the tourist destination, but it's right. This town is right next to there. So with also this Mayan train, Tren Maya, which is being built, they're expecting an influx of tourists. And so Raul was just saying that they're thinking about how that's going to affect those visitors, how it's going to affect the local kind of economy, ecosystem. And he lived many years, Don Fede lived for many years in Cancun as a taxi driver, but he decided to come back to his hometown and try and contribute to this project, which was for the benefit of his family members and the other neighbors around the town.
Quiero avisar al equipo que tenemos 10 minutos más y quiero estar segura que puedan hablar los alumnos.
En este sentido nos llamó la atención esta comunidad precisamente, y precisamente para que los estudiantes, los chicos que van a trabajar con esta comunidad, empiecen a reflexionar un poco sobre eso. Leímos, platicamos sobre un texto que habla sobre racismo y desarrollo, donde el gobierno pues tenía prácticas que no eran adecuadas en la comunidad, y eso estaba afectando a la comunidad. Entonces fue un texto que queríamos que los chicos leyeran para que empiecen a reflexionar, y pues ellos como agentes en el sentido de la educación, que seguramente van a estar en comunidades, pues puedan pensar también y reflexionar y criticar también qué tanto podríamos afectar en estos contextos sociales.
So Raul was just mentioning about this paper, Racism and Development, which is from some anthropologists from our university, and it looked at basically some government projects in the past that had been very counterproductive, and the government had considered it to be a failure. But that article for us was like a lot of examples of how we didn't want to do things, basically. Seguimiento y fortalecimiento.
Seguimiento y fortalecimiento. Fomentar y construir relaciones orgánicas y de confianza que ayuden a lograr un beneficio mutuo y recíproco para todas las partes involucradas.
Un día que podemos lograr que ellos estén y poder interactuar con nosotros con mayor, no solamente para nosotros, porque yo he visto que cuando llegaron un grupo me dicen, no, pues júntanos unos jóvenes para interactuar. Invitar a fulanos, son los que están interesados también en la causa.
Pero lo que queremos, si decimos, es que quiero aprender inglés, pues sí, pero no, el tiempo no nos va a dar. Y no voy a aprender en menos de una semana, necesito más tiempo para aprender. Entonces, acá creo que necesitamos algo. Para ellos también es una visita. Pido que nosotros también podamos aprender y captarlo. A la semana o a las 2, 3 visitas que hagan, ya aprendí algo. Y ya es de beneficio para nosotros. De igual forma también ellos pueden llevar algo de nosotros.
Este fortalecimiento no se podría lograr sin paciencia, tiempo y oportunidades de conocerse de formas auténticas, respetando el tiempo de todas las partes involucradas y siendo conscientes del carácter de nuestras interacciones.
Yo te voy a dar todo lo que tú necesitas. Pero pues también no es el concepto de nosotros. El concepto de nosotros es que sea nosotros quienes va a trabajar acá y nuestros hijos y gente que nos queda. Eso está interesante. Tenemos gente que se quedó en Cancún, mis familiares, mis hermanitos. Tengo gente que se quedó allá que pues hoy en día muy poco me da ganas de ir allá porque me cansé. Pero yo regresé con esta intención que mi pueblo empiece a buscar una forma equitativa, una forma para que ellos puedan tener beneficios. Ya que estamos cerca de la zona arqueológica, aprovechando el turista que llega, pues podemos sacarle provecho.
Cuidando que las colaboraciones no se reduzcan a lo meramente transaccional.
Que a veces la gente que llega tiene un corazón más abierto, más de recibir de lo que se está ofreciendo.
Ya les expliqué hace rato, tenemos más cosas, muchísimas más cosas que ofrecer si hubiera más tiempo. Si hubiera más tiempo, además de la clase de maya, matemáticas, jeroglíficos, podemos caminar en el pueblo, aprender de las plantas medicinales, aprender de la cosmovisión, de cómo entendemos el mundo. Hay muchas cosas que aprender. Entonces, más agradecimiento que otra cosa para quienes nos han visitado. Porque pues, gracias a ellos, desde 1997 hasta hoy, el grupo todavía existe. El grupo se llama Tumben Sasi. Es una nueva luz. Porque son niños. Es como que están descubriendo algo nuevo. Están viendo la luz del mundo como la sabiduría de los mayas que está allá. Es simplemente despertarles esa curiosidad para que la vayan aprendiendo y esperando que cuando ya sean grandes lo puedan demostrar y lo puedan reproducir.
Okay, so just finishing up, this is the last section, the last principle, strengthening and following up. As I mentioned, the pace of decision making, the pace of communication is important to be able to adjust to that. Also, however well designed or beneficial or helpful you think your project may be, don't just arrive with the idea of implementing it in a results-driven manner like a business project. It does take time to build relationships and trust above all. And with a one and done mindset, don't be surprised if the relationships become very transactional, like what's in it for me kind of thing. And as Raul mentioned, the article that we shared was of particular interest because it critiqued development projects in the very community that we were going into and provided, if anything, examples of how not to work. So all three of us have been coordinating this, but Mary may bring students once a year, but Raul and I are closer, so we can do pre and post visits, and those have been crucial to share ideas, objectives, feedback, and once the planned activities in a community have taken place, it's very easy also to just pat yourself on the back, say they loved it, we loved it, it was a success. But did everyone perceive it as a success? You have to go back, obviously, and ask those difficult questions. Would anyone do anything differently the next time? Who is it benefiting really? And was anything said or done that made anyone feel uncomfortable? Those answers may, in fact, make you feel uncomfortable, but they strengthen the project by fostering a philosophy of continuous improvement and also ensuring that all the stakeholders feel that their viewpoints are being heard. And, well, in this case, we were lucky enough to have real friendships develop over time. For example, we were invited to stay for coffee and then stay to watch the next episode of the telenovela. Why didn't we go to the beach? Because there was one of these puentes, like an extra long weekend coming up. And during that beach trip, invitations to a family wedding in the town. So those the long-term strengthening of the bonds, for me, was a real unexpected benefit of the project and the principles, but also a testament, I think, to the way we've been working. So long may that continue. And there is one more slide, if we're okay for time, which is the students themselves who were in charge of the Ekbalam project. If there are any few more minutes.
I'm sure if people need to read, we understand. But yeah, the students wanted to talk about what they've been doing in Ekbalam because, as Sam said, we left and they continued this project, listening to the community, hearing what they want.
Primero quiero presentarme, soy Mirna, él es Mike. Somos dos alumnos, en realidad 6 que estuvieron a cargo de llevar a cabo este proyecto. Regina, Claudia, Wendy, Camila, eso necesito para el trabajo colaborativo de todos, pues no hubiese dado.
So, our students from Bali, this is Mirna, Mike, Regina, we have Cami, we have Wendy, we have Claudia. We all managed to work as a group and we worked together well with this project, and overall we are going to tell you a little bit about our experience.
Nos gustaría mucho que observen esta foto. En esta foto resumimos lo que nosotros queríamos lograr y transmitir con nuestro proyecto. Los maestros ya les explicaron claramente cada uno de los principios que nos rigieron para poder llevarlo a cabo, pero esta foto sentimos que resume en esencia lo que hicimos y lo que queríamos lograr.
So this photo is basically a summary of what we wanted to do. The things we were pursuing originally, what we were working for, we think this is it. Basically, there was this part of the this second visit that we had that we were a part of, the students, where we were going through the small town and they were telling us trivia about the place. So we got to know about that.
Bueno, continuando con lo que decía Mike, llegar hasta este punto, esta interacción tan amena entre la comunidad y nosotros, tuvo un gran proceso anterior a ese. Hubieron muchas pláticas de por medio, el respeto entre unos, entre los otros, la curiosidad de ellos por aprender, la curiosidad de nosotros por aprender de ellos.
Yes. The process was long and it was very intricate. Definitely, they were really interested in learning and we also wanted to learn from them. So those exchanges that were happening were really fruitful. We really appreciate that part of the whole work. And well, yes, I mean, in reality, it has been a great experience. We are still working on it, and overall, the things that we have been doing with Balam, with the people over there, they have been amazing, and they have shaped a different view for us. They have made us expand a lot of what we thought before, and it has just made us feel better with how we are engaging with our community. And
Exactamente. El trabajo de cualquier maestro es difícil. El trabajo de ustedes es totalmente diferente al que nosotros conocemos. el trabajo dentro de comunidad es aún más diferente del de ustedes y el de nosotros. Fue una experiencia totalmente, no quiero decir nueva, pero sí sorprendente, algo que no esperábamos, pero que estamos muy agradecidos. Estamos extremadamente agradecidos con muchas personas, con el maestro San, con el antropólogo, con la doctora, con las personas a cargo de esta comunidad, don Fede, don Mario, a todos los participantes. Aquí aparecen algunos de ellos, Esteban, José, Manuel, muchísimos más.
So basically just mentioning everyone that we are that we thank for all of these opportunities, Dr. Curran, Pam, anthropologist, everyone really, and the people from like Balam, because they have been amazing, honestly. They just opened their arms and they said, come here, and they really taught us a lot.
I'm going to add one thing Mirna said in the beginning, that being a teacher is hard work. And she said, all of what you're doing is really hard work. And she said, being a teacher in Rutgers is hard work. Being a teacher where they teach is hard work. Being a teacher in Ekbalam is really hard work. And so everybody is learning from each other.
Can I add something? ¿Puedo agregar algo? Also, like when we realized how many visits we would have, and they weren't too many, like basically staying the night there and having two 2-hour sessions on the Friday and two 2-hour sessions on the Saturday. And they felt very under pressure to like make as much progress, cover a whole syllabus in those 2 days. And I reminded them that they're kind of laying the foundations for something that's going to be long term. And maybe some students who are currently in 3rd semester will be the next ones going. And it was going to be hopefully like a sequential thing that students from generation after generation can keep going and building on the previous students' work.
Nosotros somos la primera generación que trabaja directamente con esta comunidad, 2 días, pero esto queremos lograrlo a gran escala. Aquí no se detiene lo que queremos lograr con ellos. Hay un entusiasmo genuino de que ellos aprendan y tienen muchas ganas de enseñarnos a nosotros. Y precisamente eso es lo que hay que agradecer y reconocer y sobresaltar de todos los valores que los maestros presentaron. Una comunidad no es un mundo ajeno al de nosotros. Simplemente son personas que no tenemos la oportunidad o no tenemos las ganas de conocer totalmente cómo son.
Yes. Well, yeah. The collaboration has just really made us have a different sense of what we already knew. Community learning, as already mentioned, we had a specific idea of it, right? But once we realized that we were, well, having these connections and making these things that we could use with these people, well, yeah, that was a lot.
Echarle la mano.
Yeah. I know.
Mirna basically reiterated what we said at the beginning, but then said like, ¿puedes repetir la última parte?
Ella dijo, una comunidad tiene mucho que enseñarnos. Nosotros tenemos mucho que aprender de ellos. No somos las personas adecuadas para decirlos, nosotros somos los mejores.
Exactly.
Podemos enseñarles a ellos. No, ellos son mejores en muchas cosas que nosotros no.
So basically, going in with this idea of like, we have a lot to teach them, they have a lot to learn from us, is something that we have understood to be wrong, and we have been able to see everything that is to be learned and the richness, the cultural richness in the community. And I think maybe as education students, that side of education was maybe underdeveloped in the education classes that they've been having. It's been very focused on classrooms, and this is something very different. So we realized that we were kind of starting from scratch from some of those areas. And yeah, it's kind of inverting the standard kind of power dynamic, and reciprocity and learning and understanding the value that is already present, and especially like the linguistic side. We all want to learn Maya as well, so it's not a question of like they need to know English to help them. Even the word help is problematic, and we were avoiding it as much as we could because it's more of a kind of sharing.
Solo quiero recuperar específicamente una frase que dijo Mirna, que fue una comunidad no es un mundo ajeno al nuestro. Creo que fue las cosas
Fue la que se nos olvidó. Okay, yeah, Camila thankfully remembered the key phrase that Mirna had said, una comunidad no es ajena al nuestro. So a community is not something that is alien to us. We just don't know enough about it yet.
Bueno, de mi parte es todo. Sé que Mike y todas las demás tendrán muchísimas más experiencias que decir. Hay pequeños momentos de 5 minutos, es un lapso corto, pero tuvimos aprendizajes enormes. O sea, lo que puedes aprender en toda una vida, lo puedes aprender allí en, ¿qué? 2 horas. Son comunidades totalmente enriquecedoras y pues agradecemos nuevamente el apoyo de todos los maestros y esperemos que esto les sea de ayuda para ustedes para pues conocer un poco más de lo que puede ser el trabajo de una comunidad dentro de una comunidad rural como parte de una interculturalidad.
We appreciate it. Yeah, we appreciate very much everyone's attention, and we also do think that all of these opportunities to learn were something really big, because things that you could have learned in a lifetime were learned in a few hours, and just by the collaboration that we had with them. As things were happening, everything was flowing just smoothly, and well, it was natural. It was very seamless, and we probably were not expecting that, but it happened, and we're happy for it. And I appreciate everyone's support too. So that's it from us.
Thank you, Mike. We can never do this in these little 5-minute snips that we gave you and do justice to it. You know, time is gone. We can stay and answer questions for anybody who has them, but I don't think we need to do that. Thank you, and we do have a thank you video that will maybe just be that one, but thank you all. Thank you. Yeah, thanks so much.
And please come next week.
I figured, don't worry.
They also have a gift I want to go everywhere. Because I want to send you
It's better. But I'm glad here. Ready to actually really start doing things.
Quiero decir algo. Yes, thank you. Great job.
Yeah, we are. 6 people.